Guys, so today we're going to be talking about recursive formulas, and you're either going to have an arithmetic sequence or a geometric. Okay, so you know it's going to be arithmetic if the pattern is either adding or subtracting a certain number each time, and geometric is either going to be multiplication or division. Okay, they look really big and scary, but it's really not that bad. If you ever see a sub 1, that means it's your very first term. If you see a sub 2, it means it's your second term, okay? Alright, so what this means is the nth term, which means any term we're trying to look for. This piece right here means the previous term, so a sub n minus 1 is just the previous term. And then this d represents your common difference. Okay, so if you forget, just look down here and it tells you what each of them stands for. Same thing, the nth term, whichever term you're looking for, is equal to r. R happens to be your common ratio, so what are you multiplying by each time, or what are you dividing by each time? And then a sub n minus 1 is the previous term. So it looks big and scary, but it's really not that bad. Alright, so let's jump into some examples. Alright, so we don't have to keep flipping back and forth. Let's go ahead and write it at the top of our page. We know it was a sub n equals a sub n minus 1, which is the previous term, plus d. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is find our pattern. So what is happening as we move forward? Our first term is 5, so our a sub 1, the first term, is 5. So I'm going to go ahead and label that. Okay, so what's happening as I move from 5 to 9 to 13 to 17? I know we are adding 4 each time. So my common difference is a positive 4. So, in words, we started at 5 and we're going to add 4 repeatedly. So let's write our formula. So I know that we can find any term, the nth term, equals. We're going to take our previous term, which is a sub n minus 1, and then our common difference we said was 4, a positive 4, because we're adding 4 each time. Guys, I might write this sideways from now on, because it's probably going to fit better. So when I write my formula, to find the nth term, you take the previous term, and you added 4. And you always have to start by putting your first term, so we're also going to add that our first term, a sub 1, was 5. So we started at 5, and we added 4 repeatedly. So it looks big and scary, but it's really not so bad. Alright. Let me zoom out some. Okay, my first term is 40. Notice, a sub 1 is 40. Second term, 34. Third term, fourth term. So I'm trying to figure out what is happening each time as we move forward. So I know each time I am subtracting 6. So this time our common difference is a negative 6. Alright, so let's write it in words. I know we're starting at 40. And subtract 6 repeatedly. So that's what's happening in words. Okay, so now we need to write that in an equation, so I'm going to turn it sideways, right? So to find any term, our nth term, it's going to be equal to the previous term, a sub n minus 1. And this time our common difference was a negative 6, so I'm going to put minus 6. We have to remember to always put our first term, and our first term was 40. So we started at 40, and then we subtracted 6 repeatedly. Alright, so remember this column is your first term, so our first term is 7. Let's find our common difference. Let's figure out what's happening each time. So to get from 7 to 4, to get from 4 to 1, we had to subtract 3. So our common difference is a negative 3. So in words, we're starting at 7 and subtract 3 repeatedly. Alright, so let's write that as a formula. So to find any term, our nth term, we're going to start with our previous term, a sub n minus 1, and our common difference was a negative 3, so we're going to subtract 3. Remember, you cannot forget to put your first term, and we started with a 7. So we started with 7, and we subtracted 3 repeatedly. Alright, so that's how you do arithmetic. That's either when it's going to be adding a number or subtracting a number each time. Alright, geometric. So let's go ahead and write the formula at the top so we don't have to flip back. That was a sub n, any term, the nth term, the common ratio, times the previous term. Okay, so instead of giving you numbers, they can give you a figure instead. Well, I know on my first figure we have 1 diamond, so I'm going to put a 1 right here. On my second figure we have 3 diamonds, so I'm going to put a 3. On my third figure we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Alright, so where did we start with? We started with 1 diamond. Now I have to figure out the pattern. What is happening to get from 1 to 3 to get from 3 to 9? Well, we are multiplying by 3. So this is called your common ratio, and our common ratio is 3. Alright, in words, we started at 1. And multiply by 3 repeatedly. Okay, so now we have to put that in our formula. So to get any term, our nth term, we're going to take our common ratio, which we said was 3, right? You take your common ratio, which we said was 3, and we're going to multiply it by our previous term, so a sub n minus 1. Don't forget, you always have to put your starting point. So our first term was 1. Oh, was it? Yeah, it was. Okay. Okay. Our first term is 8, second term is this, third term is this. So our first term is 8. Okay, notice our numbers are getting smaller, so instead of multiplying by something, I know we're actually dividing by something, so you never actually say divide. We have to figure out what are we multiplying by, which means it's going to be a smaller number. So to figure out what that is you take your second number, and we're going to divide it by the first number. So I'm going to take 6.4, and I'm going to divide it by 8. So I'm going to get my calculator. We said 6.4 divided by 8. Okay, I got 0.8. Alright. Okay, but I don't want to just trust it. Focus. So now I want to make sure that if I take 6.4 and I multiply by 0.8, is this what I would get? $5.12. Very good. So I know to get from each one, to get from 8, to get to 6.4, to get to 5.12, we were multiplying by 0.8. So my common ratio is 0.8. And remember, we figured that out by taking our second term and dividing it by the first term. Okay, so we start at 8 and multiply by 0.8 repeatedly. So now let's write our formula. To get our nth term, any term, we take our common ratio, which is 0.8, and we're going to multiply that by our previous term, which is a sub n minus 1. You have to remember to put our first term down, and our first term was 8. Okay, so on this one, we were going from 14 to 7 to 7 halves to 7 fourths. My first term is 14. Since it's going down, I know it's going to be multiplying by a number less than 1. So to figure that out, we take our second number and divide it by our first number. 7 divided by 14 is 0.5. Okay, so let's not just trust it. Let's try it out. 0.5 or 1/2. So those are the same thing. I don't care which one you use. But since these are fractions, I'm going to go ahead and use the 1/2. So, come on. I don't know why it won't focus on both of them. Okay, so in the calculator, I'm going to take 7 and I'm going to multiply it by 1/2. And we should get 7 over 2, which we do. Okay, so now let's try it. 7 over 2 times 1/2, which we should get 7 over 4, which we do. So I know that our common ratio is either 0.5 or 1/2. I don't care which one you want to use. I'm going to write 0.5. Either one works. Okay, so we started at 14, and we multiplied by 0.5 or 1/2 repeatedly. Alright, so let's write our formula. To get our nth term, any term, our common ratio is 0.5, and you're going to take 0.5 and multiply by the previous term. We can't forget to put where we started, so our first term was 14. Cool? Alright, so that looked big and scary, but it's really not bad at all because this is the way it's going to be asked. Okay, it says a sequence can be generated by using this formula where a sub 1 is 6 and is a whole number greater than 1. What are the first 4 terms? Well, it tells me my first term right here. So every answer choice starts at 6, which it should. Okay, then I look at the formula. What's happening here? This 4 is in front of that a, right? And it's touching. When it's touching, that means multiply. So I just need to take this 6 and multiply by 4. 6 times 4 is 24. To get to the next one, we're going to multiply by 4 again. That's going to give me 96. Then I'm going to multiply by 4 again. That's going to give me 384. So I know my answer had to be F, because it told me to start at 6. First term is 6. And it's saying multiply by 4 here. Okay, so I kind of want you to try 8 and 9 on your own. Just pay attention to what's happening. It's saying your first term is 8. It's telling you to subtract 3. Right? Okay. On this one, you know your first term. That's your first term, right? And as you move from one to the next, figure out what is happening. And then from there, pick which of these formulas match what's happening. Alright, try to 8 and 9 on your own.